Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the man accused of orchestrating the deaths in the notorious Shakahola forest massacres appears in court on terror charges. The bodies of hundreds of followers of self-appointed religious leader Paul Mackenzie have been dug up from the Kenyan wilderness. Also, up and out, US troops pull out from their base in Niger's capital, completing a key phase in their total withdrawal from the country, ordered by the military junta earlier this year. And hundreds of thousands of families in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado region continue to struggle with the aftermath of an underreported conflict. I hear from one of the UN chiefs trying to improve the conditions of millions of the displaced. But first, the leader of a Kenyan doomsday cult charged with the deaths of over 400 of his followers appeared before a packed court in Mombasa on Monday. Self-proclaimed pastor Paul Mackenzie is the biggest name of 95 defendants facing terrorism, murder, manslaughter and child cruelty charges. Our Liv Bizu tells us more.
It's the latest chapter in the horrific Mackenzie saga. The self-proclaimed pastor appeared in court this Monday in Kenya's second biggest city of Mombasa, along with 94 of his co-defendants. They've been accused of ordering more than 400 people to starve themselves to death so that they could reach heaven before the world ended. Now, most of the bodies that were found had starved themselves to death, but others appeared to have been tortured, strangled and beaten. Dozens of victims were found alive, but many more remain missing. Now, the court is scheduled to hold witness testimonies for 4 days this week, and another set of testimonies is going to be held later in July. They're going to be giving more details about the teachings that they received, and they're expected to give details about the massacres that took place as well. Now, Mackenzie and his 94 co-defendants all pleaded non-guilty to charges of terrorism at a hearing in January. They also faced charges of kidnapping, murder and child torture in separate cases. Now, a lot of the Kenyans that I've been speaking to are still in shock. They do not understand how something so horrific could have been taking place for so long undetected.
Look now at some news in brief. A Kenyan court has ordered the government to pay over 72,000 euros in compensation to the family of a Pakistani journalist shot dead by police in Nairobi in 2022. Monday's ruling found that officers acted unlawfully, rejecting their claim that TV journalist Arshad Sharif died as a result of mistaken identity. Sharif's widow filed the complaint last year over the lack of investigation into her husband's death, and the courts also ordered police authorities to prosecute the two officers involved. Staying in Kenya, hundreds of people attended a memorial concert for the 39 killed in 2 weeks of protests over planned tax hikes. Huge crowds headed to central Nairobi on Sunday for the commemorations, many keeping up calls for the exit of President William Ruto. Now, the initially peaceful youth-led marches began last month, but eventually sparked a deadly police crackdown. Ruto also eventually scrapped the controversial finance bill at the heart of the unrest, but has announced budget cuts to cover the projected shortfall. And Kigali says it's taken note of the new UK Prime Minister's intention to scrap his predecessor's controversial policy to deport asylum seekers from Britain to Rwanda. The East African country was lined up to take in migrants from Britain under a deal set up by the Conservative government that was swept out of power last week. Kigali's reminded Downing Street that the partnership was initiated there to tackle a problem faced by the UK and not Rwanda, and that it's held up its side of the troubled multi-million-dollar agreement. Now, US troops are well on their way to exiting Niger by mid-September, a deadline set by its military leaders. Now, the last soldiers have just pulled out of Niamey. The US had hundreds of troops in the country as part of anti-terror efforts in the region, but Niger scrapped military cooperation with Washington earlier this year. Our Laurent Berstecker tells us more.
Passing down the torch, Colonel Maman Sanikiao and his men were given a final tour of the facilities as US troops completed their withdrawal from Niamey Air Base 101 on Monday.
This operation was completed ahead of schedule and without any complications. US forces will now focus on their withdrawal from Agadez Air Base 201.
It was the culmination of a process that began 2 months ago when Niger scrapped its military cooperation agreement with the US. Last year, French troops were the first to leave the country as Niger's military government sought to deeply reform its foreign policy and assert its national sovereignty. Since seizing power last year, the junta has distanced itself from its traditional Western allies, echoing similar initiatives by neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso. On Saturday, the three countries officially announced their departure from regional bloc ECOWAS, despite repeated warnings the move could further destabilize an already volatile region.
The withdrawal of these three countries will be a major blow to security cooperation, particularly in terms of intelligence sharing and participation in the fight against terrorism.
Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso also confirmed the creation of a new confederation, the Alliance of Sahel States, which they say will help combat jihadist groups operating inside their borders.
And Rwandans head to the polls in a little over a week. President Paul Kagame is expected to return for a fourth term. He points to the economic transformation the country's seen under his leadership as one of his main selling points. But not everybody's enjoyed the gains, and the inequalities are evident in some places, not least in the fine dining boom that starkly contrasts the rising cost of staples weighing down less affluent households in the capital. Our team reports.
Japanese plums, beet chips and zucchini puree meticulously put together.
There you go. It's well garnished with the flowers and everything. Bon appétit.
In Kigali, Chef Claude has been developing high-end local cuisine for 8 years and coordinates an association of 400 professionals. With the rise of the Rwandan economy, one of the most dynamic in Africa, luxurious restaurants are multiplying to cater to wealthy tourists and business travelers.
Many new hotels come with international standards, 5 stars or more. They require premier service and obviously need high-end clients. So we have to be able to satisfy these people.
A dish here can cost around $10, but nearly half of Rwandans live on less than $2 a day. In the suburbs, this cook prepares rice, beans and potatoes in large quantities for workers. His dishes only cost $1, but prices have risen in recent years.
The costs of some products increase every day, and it complicates our lives. My salary cannot be increased because my restaurant is always spending more to buy products.
To fight inflation, the government has regulated the prices of raw materials. But on the eve of the elections, consumers are demanding new measures.
I want food prices to go down and match my salary. If I earn 1,500 francs a day, then I should be able to buy my meal for an equivalent price.
The high cost of basic products is one of the rare public criticism Rwandans openly make about Paul Kagame's record.
Now, hundreds of thousands of displaced families in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado region continue to struggle daily with the aftermath of an underreported conflict. Now, since 2017, violent clashes have forced millions from their homes as armed jihadist extremists attack communities and clash with security forces. Now, the displaced have witnessed brutal violence that has claimed thousands of lives. And although there has been some improvement to security, there's still a ways to go, and many are still stuck in limbo, in hubs for the displaced, like the city of Pemba. Well, now I'm joined by Jorge Moreira da Silva, UN Under-Secretary General and UNOPS Executive Director. Now, he's recently back from Mozambique, where he's been trying to oversee efforts to shore up basic infrastructure at hubs for the displaced. Jorge, thanks very much for making the time to come speak to me. First of all, I mentioned there just some of the improvements that we've seen when it comes to security in Mozambique, but it's far from safe. Is the country, or Cabo Delgado specifically, really at a point when it can afford to focus on anything other than security at this point?
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be with you and with our colleagues this evening. Indeed, the situation improved. If you compare the situation today with 2017 or even 2020 or 22, the security conditions improved. However, we are not yet at the stage where we can say that the problem is solved. 1 million people had to leave their homes to find a safe place. Half of them return to their homes, but we still deal with more than 500,000 internally displaced people. The security condition, as I mentioned, improved, but for instance, last May in Macomia, there was a very intense attack. So I would say that the development component is critical. Cabo Delgado was facing poverty, inequalities, vulnerability and fragility even before these attacks in 2017. It's important to now go beyond short term and to provide all the development support that the province needs. This is important both because many people are still suffering, both the hosted communities and the forced displaced people, but also because the more we do on development, the greater will be the gains in terms of peace and security.
Yeah, because you were saying that one of the concerns that you specifically have from actual experiences you've had with people on the ground is that this uncertainty that particularly young people are facing in the region means that they might be more vulnerable to extremist elements who might be looking to recruit disenfranchised young people. So how does the work that is currently being done address that?
That's the key issue. Even if I insist the security dimension is working well, the government has managed to improve the security, we know that it's important to cut any chances of the young people to be recruited by these terrorist groups. And we know that the chances to reduce, our ability to reduce those chances are ultimately related with two things, education and job creation. That's why it's so important to invest on development. Investing on development, it's the best way to build resilience and to address the root causes of fragility. That's why these UNOPS activities are very much focused on building schools, building health facilities, but also creating the best conditions for job creation.
But, you know, it's a poor region. They're coming out of conflict. You're putting in infrastructure because they don't have infrastructure. How do you make sure the work that you're doing now actually produces long-term gains? Are you just parachuting in, you know, infrastructure, tools, buildings, or is there something in this mechanism that means that the actual people left behind can take the reins and continue to reap the rewards of the work that you're doing here?
I think that it's working. You know, this partnership between the government, the World Bank, and UNOPS is delivering results. It's delivering results because we are building all these facilities, the 40 schools, 24 health centers, 17 community markets, but also because the providers, the suppliers, the people that we contract to deliver these projects are from Mozambique.
George?
97% of all the providers are coming from Mozambique, and 50% of them from Pemba and from Cabo Delgado.
Thank you so much for your time, George, and we wish you the very best of luck that you, in your efforts to try and provide some support for the displaced in and around Cabo Delgado. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for Eye on Africa. Join us again. Take care.